It's 10:22 p.m. and we're coming to you live from Washington, D.C. Now, here's the star of this special edition of Politically Incorrect, Bill Maher.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Welcome to the show. I'm Bill Maher, and this is the special edition of Politically Incorrect, the show that salutes President Clinton for delivering a clear, coherent State of the Union speech, even during those moments when David Gergen was drinking a glass of water. Well, tonight my guests are Representative Jim Traficant, Marion Barry, G. Gordon Liddy, and Harvey Fierstein. And this is going to be fun, because this is the time of year when everybody takes stock of where we are as a country. And the polls show some interesting results. I don't know if you read this today. 43% of Americans now say crime is the most important issue. 31% say it's health care. And 19% just want a morning zoo coffee mug. If you just watch this speech, apparently crime is the hot issue this year. Of course, one of Clinton's major accomplishments, he referred to it, was passing the Brady Bill, or as he said, the Brady Law, which critics say won't have much of an impact on crime. But I don't know, I was downtown the other night, and some guy came up to me and said, "Give me your wallet or I'll blow your brains out in 5 business days." So I think it's working. Now this is a town where you really have to know your way around. We've only been here about a week. But the other day I was walking near the Capitol building and I stepped in something, and I went, "Oh no, geez!" It turned out just to be a big pile of shinola. I know they're too young to remember that. Well, anyway, the other big issue, of course, is health care, which is so difficult because, for one thing, the practice of medicine now has become so specialized. Last night, I was talking to a doctor who only operates on the wazoo. But the speech, let's get back to the speech. It seemed to be very well received. It was interrupted a record 56 times. We counted 55 by applause, and of course once by Morgana. So. Now, I know the president worked very hard on that speech. He spent the weekend at Camp David going over it informally with all of his key advisors. Some people say a little too informally because, at dinner, I don't know if you heard this, but Gore had a few too many drinks and slurred his word. So, oh, man. Can't miss with Gore. Okay, now, I am sure the president was nervous as to whether his performance was going to be strong enough, which I guess explains why he had Tanya Harding break Bob Dole's good arm. Well, we may have a lot of problems, but I think it's important to remember that this is still the best country in America. So stay exactly where you are, and remember, all the material you'll see on the show has been, as always, satirized for your protection. Thank you. You heard America caused cancer by communists. Since Vietnam, we only fight the easy part. Everybody up to that. Politics is show business. Clinton's just Reagan without the sand. All the women in the world.
Sexual man.
I have a dream.
Okay, we are live. We are live, and just to convince the people at home that that's real, we are going to look unprofessional, unprepared at moments. But we are back, and welcome to the show. We're from Washington, D.C. This is our special edition, and it's time to meet our special guests. First, an award-winning Tony Award-winning playwright and actor, plus a noted gay rights activist, and he's currently co-starring in the nation's #1 film, Mrs. Doubtfire. Harvey Fierstein is here. Hey, Harvey. Thanks for coming by. Have a seat. Okay.
I'm ready.
A United States representative from Ohio, we're flattered he passed up on the invitation to watch the president's speech in the Congress and join us with this much more esteemed crowd, Congressman Jim Traficant.
Bill, how you doing,
Hey,
sir?
man, good to see you
Good to see
again.
you.
Thank you. A 6'10" forward from Notre Dame, Scottie Pippen. No, I'm sorry. All right, it's a real pleasure to have our next guest, a man who has changed the history of our country, or at least tried to, and currently hosts a hugely successful, nationally syndicated radio program called G. Gordon Liddy Show. G. Gordon Liddy is here. There he is. Hey, Gordon. Gotta stop following me. All right, and finally here at the Men's Club, the former three-term mayor of Washington, D.C., and currently a member of the District City Council, Marion Barry. Hello, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for being with us. All right. Sit right down, get comfortable, and first of all, I did not see the speech. I was in makeup. The speech just ended. I assume you all watched it, and the first thing I want to ask you is, I think you probably would all agree that content in this country politically means absolutely nothing. What did you think of his performance? I'm going to start with you, Gordon. What do you think just as a speech maker?
Well, I want to note two things. First of all, I'd say that President Clinton is well on his way to almost matching the rhetorical ability of Ronald Reagan. I wish he could match his economic performance, but I don't think that will happen.
No, he can't run up a deficit that big.
Is that by his own figures, he intends to increase the deficit by $1 trillion, which is pretty good in another 3 years. The other thing I do want to note is I want to congratulate you. Look at this panel. The only person here who has not been convicted or under indictment is gay. And I think that's
And the worst part is, what I'm really scared about is you all put me up at the Watergate Hotel. I gotta watch for him in the middle of the night.
I also have not been indicted. I assume you were talking about...
Let's leave.
Wait about another 20 minutes here. We'll see.
Well, Harvey, what do you think? What do you think of his performance?
I think he looked
was he
fabulous.
believable in the...
That was a gorgeous suit. That was a gorgeous tie.
You know,
and Hillary's new hair, fabulous.
You sound a lot like him at the end of the speech.
I coached him. I am his voice coach.
Is that where he got that from?
I am his voice coach.
Okay, Congressman, do you usually go to the State of the Union speech?
Yes, I do. I thought the president did a tremendous job. I think he outlined many of the key things and issues that are affecting the American people. There's one that he overlooked I think is very important, and that'd probably be a 10-day waiting period on some of this domestic violence going along, like Lorena Bobbitt and some of these issues around the country. And maybe we might deal with that in this section. But I thought he did well. I thought his performance was great. And I agree with G. Gordon. I think he raised it to a whole new level. I think he did a great job.
Okay, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I was in Atlanta in 1988, and I heard that long, boring diatribe, never-ending speech of Governor Clinton. And it was like night and day tonight. I mean, he was fantastic in terms of his delivery. He was calm. I would give him A++ on delivery, and probably about an A- on content, which we'll get to later. So I was impressed.
We are going to get to that in a second.
Now let me just say that I'm a Clinton supporter. I mean, as many Americans, I had gotten tired of 12 years of Reagan Bush, so I am biased. But being an objective politician, and most of us politicians are objective.
That's kind of like Army intelligence. You usually
something like
play those terms together. But all right, listen, I have to cut away. Wait a second.
He should forget Hillary's hair. Look at his hair. I'd say Christophe is back in town. Christoph is back in town.
Listen, nobody on this panel really wants to raise the issue of hair. Okay.
I don't think so.
When we come back, things you might have missed if you didn't watch the speech closely. Janet Reno in a Bob Mackie moo-moo, and Bill Clinton referring to Al Gore as his roadie. So, we'll be back in a second.
Comedy Central's State of the Union Undressed is brought to you by Mentos, the fresh maker.
They think we don't get it, and it's time we show them that we do get it.
All right, I guess he was talking about cable there. All right, well, the next thing we want to get to is content, and let me broach it this way. A State of the Union message is, you reading your mail there? It's kind of like a shareholders meeting, if you will. I mean, the annual shareholders meeting, and he's sort of like the CEO, and he comes out and he tells us how the company is doing. Let me ask you, if you were a shareholder in this country called America, would you buy, sell, or hold? Gordon?
I'd sell short until 96.
Roy? Good answer.
I gotta watch my room tonight. Oh, jeez. Oh, I thought he did great. I thought what he said was true. I mean, I found a lot of truth in it, including the crime bill. We're not going to talk about crime around these people.
Yes, we are going to talk about
okay,
crime.
We'll get to that later. But
you want to talk about crime?
yeah, let's talk about the crime bill.
Okay.
You know what he did leave out in
It's
the
a crime that
bill?
they're not getting all the colors on your vest on camera. That is a crime, but no. But let's.
He did talk about prejudice, and he did talk about bigotry and the role that they have in crime, but he did leave out, and obviously it's one of my issues, he did leave out homophobia, and how we're still the only group that everyone can make fun of, put down, and get away with it.
That's, well...
Thank you. No,
you are not the only group that...
No,
first
you
of all,
look at what's going on with Farrakhan.
Hey,
Anybody
Harvey,
ever talk about what he says about gays and lesbians?
No, but I heard him talk about a group that it is easy to put down, smokers. Did you hear that in the speech?
Well, as a smoker, I'd like to talk about this too.
But I mean, gays aren't the only group. I mean, really, that's not fair to say.
People aren't committing violence against us.
He bashes Republicans, exactly.
But it was a partisan
But he's
speech.
not
I mean,
mugging them on a street corner.
I mean, Clinton is a Democratic.
You want to talk about violence? Talk about Bob Dole, the petty man. I think he should be a character on Saturday Night Live. The petty man. He's turned into a little old lady.
Well, the thing I like about Bob Dole when he appears on television is he's wearing the Purple Heart, which is something that the coward-in-chief can't wear.
Yeah, but the coward-in-chief didn't kill Richard.
Well, back to Clinton.
Let's get back to this issue.
Well, you know, Clinton certainly was not nonpartisan in his approach. I mean, he's a Democrat. I'm a Democrat. And I was watching as he made some statements. A number of Republicans were sitting on their hands and Democrats were cheering. So let's understand that's the nature of the situation. I thought the president did very well. I mean, if I were buying stock in America, I would not buy all of it from that speech. He talked about violence, but he never talked about the violence that's on television and in the movies and the other kinds of violence. He did not talk about the 200 million guns, handguns, that Americans now own that don't need all of those. And so he hit a high note, but he didn't hit all the notes. And so I think we ought to understand that that's what was going on.
Let me ask you this. Jesse Jackson said recently that he was among people who felt fear if he turned around and saw a black person behind him.
Who's that?
Jesse Jackson said that. You missed that?
No, I missed that.
I got a question.
I don't fear that.
He was
You
just
know,
trying
wait a minute. I live here. I live here.
Mr. Mayor, in Washington, D.C.
I live here in Washington.
In Washington, D.C., it is absolutely forbidden to own a handgun, right?
Right.
Okay. Why are all those weapons killing people in the hands of Washingtonians? It is because gun control doesn't work. What you ought to be looking after is people control.
No, Gordon, Gordon, the reason we have all these guns in Washington is that they are gun runners who are buying guns in Maryland, in Virginia, and in Texas, and all over, and bringing them into Washington and selling them to young people who are prone to want to use them.
You think young people are the only ones in Washington that have guns?
Why manufacture them?
Just about everybody in a household.
So if we
guns.
stop the guns from coming from Maryland, Virginia, Washington would be a lot safer. But more important, got to get the values. Obviously, young people see a lot of violence on television. They feel that it's macho to shoot somebody. They low self-esteem, loss of hope, loss of help, loss of jobs, loss of everything. And so they think they solve their beefs by shooting somebody. I disagree with that.
Well,
but guns can be controlled with the United States government where they get serious and buck the National Rifle Association, who you support, and buck the other gun lobbyists around in this country who believe that you need a handgun on every pillow to try to protect your lives.
Well, in Washington, D.C., sir, you would be well advised to have a handgun under your pillow if you happen to live here.
Bill, just let me say this. I see one of the things we talk about is guns and crime and violence, and I think it's time that we stop just talking about the symptoms and start looking at the causations.
Yeah.
And there are individuals that can't find work. We have companies that are still leaving this country overseas with some of the trade policies we have that I don't think were hit hard enough. I think the American taxpayer is spending about $150 billion to protect Japan and Germany and all these other foreign countries, and our soldiers and GIs are going ahead and spending their checks over there in foreign lands. I think it's time to come back and retrench.
You're asserting that poverty equals evil. It does not. Just because you're poor doesn't mean you have to be dirty, doesn't mean that you have to be criminal.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying the American taxpayers paying for the protection of everybody all over the world. And it's time to protect and take care of the priorities here at home. And we're never going to solve the drugs of prison and crime until people in this country have a way of making a living and an opportunity to participate in this competitive society.
It is a competitive society, but the Goals 2000 program is outcome-based education, which is against competition, so much so that they forbid the physical education classes to even choose up sides and have a basketball game because there's winners and there's losers. That's competition, and it teaches them to abandon competition.
But you see, you're falling into the same trap as everybody else. The Constitution says that the people govern, the people draft all laws. The President gives us his recommendation of a budget, but the American people, through a Congress duly elected, will establish those laws. And
well, let's hope that the American people, through their Congress, turn down
Miss Lady, you ought to take a day and go with me and walk the streets and talk with young people who have lost a sense of hope, where our parents in a lot of instances have failed, our schools have failed, our community, our churches have failed them, and so we have to find ways to, as a Congress.
Now, wait a second. How about Tuesday? Is that good for you?
Yeah.
How about Harvey being Tuesday? All right.
How much time did they do in the joint, sir?
Wait a minute.
How much time did they do in the joint?
Oh, are you guys going to swap?
What I want to say is, I was with the people you're talking about. I was locked up with the people you're talking about, probably for a lot longer than you were,
that's
sir.
right.
And I know exactly what you're talking about.
All right, it's time to get out of jail.
All right.
Can we get back to
And Harvey,
But more guns,
hold on to those cigarettes.
More
You need them to
guns
bribe
and
the
more
guards.
jails
Okay,
is not
listen.
the solution.
Can we talk about guns?
We will, but when we come back with all the important issues facing the nation, why did Bill Clinton open the speech with "Thank you, Jenny Craig"?
Tip O'Neill liked to call himself a man of the house, and he surely was that. But even more, he was a man of the people, a bricklayer's son who helped to build the great American middle class. Tip O'Neill never forgot who he was, where he came from, or who sent him here. Tonight he's smiling down on us for the first time from the Lord's gallery. But in his honor,
Well, he never forgot who he was. So he had a few drinks. Anyway, no, he was a nice guy. But we just got word that we went on the air live, so we did not watch the Republican response, which is tradition for the other party to make a response. But we had someone, to be fair, who was on our staff, who was a devout Republican, watch the response, and he has summarized it for us, and we have it here. What a load. That is the Republican response. Now, we were talking about the crime issue. Let's get on to welfare. He also talked about that. The big phrase around Washington is stopping welfare as we know it. Do you think that this is real? I mean, do you think this is something Bill Clinton really believes, or is it just to get another 2 applause breaks? What do you think?
Well, I think he got one of his largest applause on the welfare situation.
Right.
But I think he simplified it too much. He made it seem like it's just a matter of doing this or doing that.
Right.
And I'm convinced you can't do it quite that way. He says either you learn how to get job training, etc., and you get off in 2 years. That is a simplistic way of looking at it. Here, young people or teenage parents who dropped out of high school or elementary school, it's going to take more than 1 or 2 years. But more importantly, you got to deal with the values that in some instances there are no jobs available when they get trained.
But isn't there also something about human nature? I mean, if you were in a room with 20 people...
I do agree with the president. The present system is not working. It is terrible. It's slavery.
I interrupted your speech. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
But let me just ask you this. Ask the panel. If you were in a room with 20 people, a classroom, we've all been in a classroom. We remember what a classroom is like, or a party with relatives, 20 relatives. 2 of them, 1 or 2 of them, are always going to be people who don't succeed, who are...
I think...
You know what I'm saying? I mean, 2 of them are always going to need help from somebody.
What we need is opportunity, though.
From education to welfare,
Right.
is it does not take in the individual. You cannot say everyone's going to go this way.
Absolutely.
Not everybody's going to follow the rules that way. Not everybody can. It doesn't fit into everybody's way of, into their personal tragedies, their illnesses, their family situation, or whatever. It's just too hard.
Right.
What's wrong with our education system is we try and educate all children the same. Not all children learn the same.
And every family...
Welfare is not all people live the same. And America is about diversity. America, to me, is here are all the choices in the world. You are free to make yours.
How would you respond to that, Gordon?
Well,
that sounds pretty
point
American
the
to
main
me.
point you want to make is that you've got to stop the young kids having babies. Now, the way you stop that is to stop subsidizing young kids having babies, because that which you subsidize, you will get more of. And so I think there's a growing body of
That's
opinion,
not how
which
you
I think
stop.
can happen.
That's not how you stop. Wait a
paying
minute,
them to have babies.
Gordon. That's not how you stop young people from having babies by not subsidizing. Nobody I know gets pregnant because they get a welfare check. It's a matter of values. Wait a minute. It's a matter of values. It's a matter of their view about life, and sometimes it's a way of empowering themselves. What I think what you do, just as the president tied welfare reform to health reform, we got to tie it to education reform. We ought to be hiring 2 teachers or social workers for every 1 cop we hire, as a way of beginning to reinforce the need for education, for training, for new values. And for
Well, if you
direction.
arm the social workers and the teachers...
You think somebody going to have
how to shoot, might do some good.
Okay, we're gonna have to break away.
I think the welfare, I think the social workers will resent that. There are some social workers who care deeply about our people who are working out there and they don't have to be armed.
I know
either.
some social workers.
Mrs.
Liddy was a teacher in the
That was a
DC
nice
school
cliche.
system. Mrs. Liddy is a dead shot with a 45 ACP.
It was a nice cliche.
Hey, Gordon, leave your mother out of this. No. Now,
And your wife.
I want to
also a
talk about
smoker.
health care. He said that this is going to be the most expensive thing we've ever done. Wouldn't it be easier, if, for example, in this card, if everybody would just examine the person to your left? Couldn't we save a lot of money? Anyway, coming up next...
Get that rubber glove.
That's a great cliche, but that's not working.
No, I know. We know that. All right, coming up next, do crazy people go into politics, or does politics make people crazy?
Both.
This Congress produced tax relief for millions of low-income workers to reward work over welfare. It produced NAFTA. It produced the Brady Bill, now the Brady Law. And thank you, Jim Brady, for being here. And God bless you, sir.
A salute to Jim Brady.
He does not look very good, though.
No.
That poor thing.
Yeah, well,
I loved his movie.
Okay, Harvey, we'll be back to you in a second, but we want to get to some of the things that Clinton did not say in the speech. Now, of course, he did not mention the Whitewater scandal, whatever you think of that scandal. I think it reflects a bit on Clinton's judgment, because really, who would buy vacation land in Arkansas? But that aside, I just want to, why don't we start with you, Congressman? Tell us what you think about that. Do you think it's going to be a big scandal, like Watergate was, or do you think it's something that'll blow away?
Well, I think Clinton, like Reagan, has an awful lot of power, a lot of institutional power, and I think he'll rise above it, where Nixon and some of the Nixon people weren't as fortunate, being as targeted as they were. But, no offense to you, Gordon, but I really believe that, and I think that you can't point accusatory fingers until you get all the facts. I think there's a special prosecutor now that's been appointed. Let the chips fall where they may. Let's see what happens. It's Washington.
Yeah, but I mean, what's your gut feeling? Do you think it's going to blow over, or do you think there's really something behind it? Do you think
Personally,
they're hiding?
I think, in all honesty, he has the power, as did Reagan, in Iran-Contra and that whole mess, to maybe rise above this. And I think Clinton established himself tonight very popular. I think he made a powerful speech. He touched the issues, whether you agree with him or not. He's putting on the table the issues that affect Americans. And I think he's growing, and he's growing stronger. And his program's being accepted by the American people.
Gordon, what do you think about Whitewater?
All right, first of all, I bitterly resent the suggestion that people have when they call it Whitewater Gate. I have a proprietary interest in the Suffix Gate, and I want to tell you right now, this scandal will never rise to the significance of Watergate.
Look, don't...
Having said that...
Don't get your panties in a bunch. We're not saying he's as big a crook as you are. We're just asking the question.
Having said that, I think, first of all, that Clinton will escape. I think that the real danger is to Hillary. I'll tell you why. Under the RTC Act, the examinations and what have you that they're going on with the savings and loan are what they call a pending investigation within the meaning of the obstruction of justice statute. When the John Dean of the Clinton administration, Mr. Nussbaum, broke the seal and went into the office of Vincent Foster after his commission of suicide and withdrew the papers that had to do with Madison Savings and Loan, that could well be obstruction of justice. If he did that after consulting with Hillary, that is conspiracy to obstruct justice. And I want to say this, one John Dean a century is enough. I'm saying to Mr. Nussbaum, don't rat her out. Stay firm. I don't care how long they put you in a joint. Don't tell on her.
Well,
it's a matter of principle.
Do you think that Clinton is already distancing himself from her? By,
From what they tell me, that started a long time ago.
Gee, Gordon, you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Harvey,
I'm not. And you wonder about the morals of America.
Right, well, I was just going to ask you...
I think
He's got a radio show.
No, I think Whitewater...
Wait a second.
It's been blown out of proportion. I don't know enough about it, but something happened before the president was president.
It's just like he got a bad deal with Mr. Haney. That's all it really is. It's just...
I mean, I can think of worse SNL scandals. The president's own son out there stole millions of dollars, and so that got away. He got away with that. So
ex-president.
You're talking about
Bush. That's my Bush.
Harvey,
was it $50 million, which is what the taxpayers paid?
Might have been 200 or whatever it was.
Well, but Harvey, you brought up the moral question, and do you think we can really focus in this country on a scandal like Watergate, if that happened again, or Iran-Contra, which we did not focus on, or this, if it turned out that there was actual impropriety in government high places? Because there are so many other scandals that occupy our mind. I picture David Gergen saying to the president at some time, well, Mr. President, don't bring that out today because, there's a woman who cut off her husband's penis. And I think the people will want to follow that a little more.
There's a
difference
between the moral judgments in this town, this Washington, which scares the hell out of me as an American. This town scares me. I mean, I know you people live here. I'm sorry. I'll get you bus tickets to my town.
You mean official Washington? You don't mean the local Washington?
No, I mean
the official Washington. Those other people.
Oh, nothing to do with you, honey.
Thank you, sir.
You got morals. You got them morals. I've seen your videotapes. You got morals.
All right.
But I gotta know something. Wait, I gotta know something.
All right.
This is the first president that ever talked about gays and lesbians. The first president that ever talked about AIDS and all that. I missed some of the inclusionary statements today. When he talked about health care, and he talked about the tragedy of what people have to go through for health care, there is an entire industry built up now on buying people with AIDS insurance policies, paying them off so they can pay their doctor bills. This is an incredible tragedy that nobody seems to see anything wrong with. People are giving up every single thing they have to get AZT, which doesn't work, which is poison to the system, and they're giving up every cent they have. And this was not a tragedy he mentioned tonight, and I was hurt by it.
Well, I'm glad you did on our show, because we were...
The president get at is really, like, the congressman and I would agree on this, is a root cause of what's causing some of this crime and violence. Gordon disagrees with me. But we got to deal with not only the values of young people in terms of their attitude about work and about violence, but our institutions have to be strengthened greatly. And the president talked about 100,000 new police officers and $22 billion for jails and jail cells, and very little about, you know, major job training programs.
You ran a lousy jail when I was in it.
Wait a second. I knew you were there, so I told him to take care of you because you had done something terrible in America, you know?
Well, I'll say this for you, sir. You have a technological advantage. I mean, you had videotape. All I ever had was audio tape.
Yeah, Bill.
Where are we?
Yeah, this is a very vulnerable panel.
Bill, I think one thing is, you know, we reward in our tax code, we reward dependence, and we penalize achievement and independence. I think it's time to take a look at our tax code that penalizes working people, that taxes only income, and it's time to change that system. Start rewarding people who invest in America, buy American-made products. And I think that what we're talking about here sometimes is the symptoms. We're not getting at the cancer.
That's
to
right.
get at that cancer, there's going to have to be some fundamental changes. I think the president is starting out with welfare reform, talking about the fact that fathers who are now absent are going to have to pay the freight, even across state lines. I think that's long overdue. And repeat criminal, violent offenders should be put in a slammer, put away good. And I think nonviolent offenders should get treatment. And he talked about treatment.
What do you
so I
think-
see the
what do you-
beginning of a change there in attitude, but the tax code and the trade laws of the country must be changed, or we'll continue to wallow in
What do you
bankruptcy.
think about that? Is that a lot of rhetoric to think about the three...
What is that
Think about the three-time loser.
That's some
you
of
think
that's
that's...
rhetoric. I mean,
What's that, baseball
you
talk?
know,
And how are the Buffalo Bills going to feel
You're
about that?
simplifying violence. Here's the guy who commits a violent crime, which all of us would be opposed to, goes to jail, comes back out, can't get a job, can't work anywhere, can't do anything, and she reverts back to what they know best, is some violent crime. We need to try to find a way.
Yeah, but there's no excuse for that, Mayor, for someone
should
to
learn
prey upon
nonviolence.
someone else.
I agree with
because
that.
of their hardship.
I agree with that. I'm talking about the process, though. All right? I think the other thing about the three strikes you out is that,
Yeah.
a little notice that the three strikes, the third strike only applies if you commit it on federal property.
That's right. This is going to
No,
have
that's what I-
absolutely no effect at all, because
Yeah,
the
that's
vast
right.
majority of crimes are under state law.
That's
This has
right.
nothing to do with the real problem.
Yes, but there are grants.
All criminals should have to meet Jean Dixon when they get out of jail. Have you seen her infomercial? She saves people in jail.
But there are grants and incentives that the federal government gives to the states that many times can mold some behavior at the state level. And it's time for that omnibus.
Congress,
budget.
more grants for education, for job training, for Health
Okay.
Start.
All
for
right.
all
We
the kind of-
heard all about that crap today. Anyway, I mean, we just heard all that political stuff. And I think you are carving out a nice constituency, Harvey. But let me ask you this. I heard him
He already has one.
I heard him quote Truman say the buck stops here. Now, he tried in the convention speech, he said the phrase new covenant about 7 times, and it didn't fly. What?
In 88?
We got a new one.
No, in '92 in the
Tonight,
speech.
we got a new one tonight.
What do you think would be a good slogan for him? He seems
Talk
to be-
hoarsely and carry a big pen. When he held up that pen and shook it, I was scared.
Okay.
He held up that pen and shook it. He meant business.
Do you think he does mean business? You think- Yes, sir.
Either New Beginnings or Brave New World. One of those two.
How about we're easy? We pass anything. He know nothing.
How about, all right, I'll answer 2 of your questions right here.
Go ahead.
The first one, you said, what didn't we hear about? We did not hear about the biggest tax increase in the history of the United States of America, and I would say you ought to have the slogan be, the buck stays here.
Why? What does that mean?
What it means is, I will explain it. All right?
Right, well, what does that mean?
Instead of a
Anyway,
new covenant, it ought to be the old Democrat. Now, that you ought to understand.
Okay.
I think G. Gordon was going to say the young and restless the way he's been taken off on the president. To be quite honest, I think he's talking about empowerment. And I think he's flirting with some of those issues that Congress is going to have to deal with. And I see some good signs there. So, I mean, we're having some light time here, G. Gordon, but the Republicans in 12 years gave us trickle-down supply-side suffer, and we're in a hell of a mess, too. We got to admit that, my man.
What we did hear, Jim, we heard about the $1.3 million, 1.3 million jobs that were just created during his administration. We did not hear about the 18 million jobs created under the Ronald Reagan administration.
Oh, stop being so petty.
That's what we ought to have.
Okay.
G. Gordon, most of those jobs were $4.50 an hour without benefits, and most of those people were looking for part-time work.
The party of lower the minimum wage. That's all they wanted.
And the biggest,
lower the minimum wage, then they wanted to white people
in the
can't
history
stay
of
home and
Reagan
take care of
Bush,
their kids.
where the rich got richer and the poor got poor.
Okay.
Bill, the truth of the matter is, there's no difference
exactly the
between
opposite.
Democrats and Republicans
The truth of the matter is we have to break away.
Service figure.
Wait.
That's exactly wrong.
Wait, shut up. Okay, now coming up next, how will children remember Bill Clinton? As the man who made sure they had a doctor, the man who made their schools better, or as the man who...
Daddy, that's how they remember.
Believe me, my joke was better. We'll be right back.
Got a problem with any of this? Well, write to us at Politically Incorrect with Bill Maher. HBO Downtown Productions, 120 East 23rd Street, New York, New York, 10010.
If you send me legislation that does not guarantee every American private health insurance that can never be taken away, you will force me to take this pen, veto the legislation, and we'll come right back here and start all over again.
All right, talking tough on that one.
Talk hoarsely and carry a big pen.
Did that get your blood going,
Yeah.
Harvey? Was that was pretty
he's so
macho?
butch.
That's pretty macho
He's
stuff.
so butch.
I know. I think that was Reno you were looking at. Anyway, oh, you'll get over it. Anyway,
She did.
we have three. We have three Washington people here. We have, and I would call them insiders, even though no one likes to be called a Washington insider. So one question we did want to ask is, are there any Mr. Smiths who still come to this town? Anybody who has that kind of idealism? And if there are, how do you tell when they start to lose that idealism?
Well, they do come to town, they are idealistic, and they're here 24 hours. They get their ass mugged, and that's it.
Wait a minute, Gordon.
One of the things
it's not all that. I think Clinton could fit that. He came here idealistically and so forth.
Oh, come on. You think Clinton was idealistic when he got here?
Yeah, I think so.
And then what happened?
I think he still is. I think his speech tonight was an upbeat, a lot of it rhetorical, no question about that. But it was, it makes you feel good about something. That's what Mr. Smith was about, coming to Washington.
That's what makes you feel good, that
Bill.
speech?
I thought the crowning touch was the catch in the throat and the crocodile tears. That was beautiful.
Bill,
That
I
was
think
beautiful.
there's some
Twice he
hope.
did that.
I think there's some hope. During this last deep freeze here in Washington, the Washington politicians actually had their hands in their own pockets. I think that was a sign of some improvement.
Congressman, I don't know how we had a deep freeze in Washington with all the hot air we got here.
Well, that might be a fact, but the truth is, I think we're starting to see some changes, real big changes in Washington.
Absolutely.
People are beginning to talk country. They're starting to talk business. They're starting to talk about the issues that affect everyone, and that's positive.
Let me tell you about the change, right? You talk about reform, Congress and everything. This was 24 hours after the general whom they hired to take care of the House Bank and straighten it all out just quit in disgust. That's how much reform is actually going on.
Yeah, I mean, those were nice words, but I mean, really, can we get real here for a second? I'm talking about people who come to this town. How do you know when they've lost that idealism? I don't know how long it takes. I don't live here. I'm looking for some facts from
As soon as they buy a
inside.
gun, then you know they've lost the idea.
I mean,
No, but seriously, I think what happened...
when they go on a fact-finding mission to the Cayman Islands, is that... those, you know what I'm talking about? Those kind of things. How do you know?
I think it's easier to get disillusioned when you come to Washington. I mean, official Washington. I'm talking about the local Washington, and you come with a lot of zeal, a lot of zest. You want to change the country, change everything.
Is that, did you come from,
Yeah, I think.
were you born here?
I was born in Mississippi, but I've been
Okay,
here
you
for
came to
30
Washington.
30 years. I love Washington, D.C.
Right.
And I was standing with Gordon Liddy says about it. I even loved it when he was in the Watergate situation, too. So, you know, you learn to love it because Washington as a city has similar problems as others, but we're doing a lot of things here. But the institutions sort of get you down. The media, for instance, it perpetuates a lot of high-profile, headline kind of things that are not as relevant as they ought to be.
The institutions do get you down. Try getting a driver's license renewed. I mean, try getting new plates.
You live in Virginia. What are you talking about?
I don't live in Virginia. I don't live in Virginia.
You don't live in D.C.?
And I did live in D.C. before you
No,
ever came
where
here.
do you live now, Gordon?
I live now in Maryland.
Well, Maryland, same thing.
Well,
Gee, Gordon, somebody could get himself in the Republican headquarters and can't get a driver's license and not telling us all the facts in that.
when you guys meet on Tuesday, you can
Bill,
work that out, who drives.
I came to Washington the first time as an adult, you know, not with a little tour with my Cub Scout group.
You want to try that again?
No, I don't. Pederasts are usually family members. I met your son. I came here as an adult with the AIDS quilt, the first time it ever showed here. And I came to Washington with great hope that we could make a difference here.
Right.
Official Washington was not there. Never showed up. Flew over us in helicopters on their way elsewhere. And we're not there.
Oh, that was
lost
on the
my
Reagan
faith.
Bush years.
Yes, it was the Reagan Bush years. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It was the Reagan Bush years. We went through 12 years of more people dying than died in Vietnam, and nothing, not a word, not anything. It really makes you lose your faith.
But you feel a different atmosphere around here
Yeah,
now?
I do.
And that's important in itself.
I want more. But to hear our names read, even as a Jew, forget that I'm a Fagala. Even as a Jew, to have the first president ever light a menorah in the White House. What country are we? It took Clinton to finally light a menorah in the White House. I mean, be ashamed of yourselves, you goyim.
But the courts are forbidding the lighting of a menorah out in the public park in the small towns all over America.
That's right, because I'm also an atheist.
Bill, one of the
I can argue that, sir.
You're an oxymoron, that's what you are.
One of the
Well, they
things
also, of course, are forbidding prayer in schools, which I'm for, too.
Yeah.
Harvard, since you mentioned killings and dying from AIDS, you know, in the last 5 years, more young people have killed each other than we lost in the war in Vietnam. That's a national tragedy.
And when you talk about violence, where was domestic violence tonight?
That's right.
Which is
the president didn't talk about that.
approaching
No.
25,000
not only
murders a year.
not only domestic violence, but violence against our seniors. I mean,
and as long as we're back around to being serious,
Bill,
let's stop manufacturing those
I happen to know the
guns.
president is paying a
I
lot
agree
more
with that.
attention to crime now that they're showing bare ass on NYPD Blue. There was
Did that so
there was
well.
a joke in there somewhere.
You did
Listen,
that so well.
when we come back, what would happen if the most powerful man in the world wakes up in the morning and says, Calgon, take me away?
If you will stick with this plan, we will post 3 consecutive years of declining deficits for the first time since Harry Truman lived in the White House. And once again, the buck stops here.
Okay, well, you are missing quite a show. You're not seeing what's going on during the commercials. Harvey has just convinced Gordon Liddy that maybe he just never met the right guy.
I'm too ugly. I've been turned down by better men than Harvey, I tell you. Can't stand the rejection anymore.
All right. But that is actually fortuitous because it brings us into the personal realm, which I want to get to about the president. Ask a couple of questions about him in a more personal vein. The first is, do you think we rely too much on one man? Do you think it's really an impossible job? Because we were, in the tease we were asking about, you know, Calgon, take me away. What would happen if the President of the United States on a Wednesday in the middle of the week when he had meetings and important things to go to just pulled the cover over his head one day and said, I have to watch soap operas. I have my period today. Tell Brit Hume I can't talk to him.
Ronald
Brazil
Reagan.
would fall. Stock markets would crumble.
Ronald Reagan did that for 9
Bill
years.
Clinton would
Reagan napped. For how many years did that man
her
nap?
husband would fill in for her.
Oh.
Well, yeah, but I think on a serious note, though, I think the media and the American public expects politicians to be superheroes.
Right.
Super beings, be above and beyond everything. That's too much. And so if the president decided one day he, she, if she was president, didn't want to work, be fine with me. I wouldn't get upset. I think the American people would. They
Take
would
a
think
personal
something wrong.
day.
Yeah, I think the American people would get very upset and think something was wrong with the president. They didn't want to work that particular day.
I wish
agree
he
with
would
Harvey.
take a mental health day.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Harvey that Ronald Reagan was asleep for about 8 years.
And what was all
but,
that George Bush, every time something happened, he went golfing or fishing.
Those are sports, Harvey.
That wasn't work.
You were asking me about that before.
wasn't
Those are
work.
Bill, the truth of the matter is that the president is the chief executive officer. He carries out and executes the laws of the American people. The American people govern through a Congress. We're getting too top-heavy, transferring a lot of power to the White House and to our courts in our country. I think it's time for the people to stop cannibalizing their own selves in their own form
Maybe
of
give more
government.
power to Ohio, huh?
Yeah, maybe. All the people of Ohio, yes.
Well, let me ask you.
This from a man.
Or
who
statehood for the
watches.
District of Columbia. You can get that.
let me
We get
let me
statehood
ask
for
you
the
this:
District
if
of
Clinton serves out his second term, or even if he gets kicked out of office, he'll still be a young man in his.
Well, he's
in
not
his-
going to get kicked out of office now. He's going to serve 8 years.
All right. Well, there's a bit of
Guaranteed.
confidence from the mayor.
Guaranteed.
Well, okay, but even still, what if he gets, whenever he leaves office, he's going to be young. What do you think he's going to do? They asked the same question to Jack Kennedy because he was about the same age. What does a man do when he's been president, when he's been the Frank Sinatra of politics? He's been at the pinnacle. What does he do?
He becomes the president of a savings and loan. I mean, just like the old days. He's got experience.
He plays in pro-am tournaments, and that's one of the problems. Many of our presidents that pass on aren't
That's not
involved
going to
again in
satisfy this
advising us.
man playing in
No,
pro-am
it shouldn't, and I
tournaments.
think all of our
I
former
think
presidents
Clinton,
should be
first
helping
of all,
us.
the last, in the 8th year of his term, he's going to campaign for Al Gore. That's the first thing he's going to do. And second, I think it'd be similar to Jimmy Carter. He'll find some major humanitarian cause that he takes up, whether it's trying to build houses for our people, trying to do something about the AIDS epidemic, which still may or may not be solved by then, whether it's trying to do something about the lack of hope and the lack of help in our inner cities. He would not be a passive Gerald Ford, do nothing kind of
I think,
president.
What-
I think,
what do you-
I think Amway. Why waste those good looks?
What do you think? We have just a little bit, but what do you think makes it worthwhile to be president with all the kind of crap they have to put up with? What do you think is it what really drives them? They will always say, well, I want to be a public
The
servant.
challenge.
The challenge, you think it's the challenge? You don't think
And
it's
the
the
hope.
plane
No.
and the fact that every time you walk into a room,
It ain't
everything
worth
is
it.
about you?
It ain't worth
and Really? How many jobs do
you
you
know,
have where someone will take a bullet for you?
No, the Air Force One, all these other perks is not worth the
What do you
hassle
think,
they
Gordon?
go
You're a
through.
cynic.
The challenge and the hope of change in America.
No, I really,
Oh, you think it's the
I
ego?
really think that. No, I think that that these people really believe that when they get here, they can do some
They can
good,
change
and some of
things,
them can.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be necessarily change. Change is not necessarily for the good. It might be preserving something that is well worth
When we
preserving.
changed from Bush to Clinton, that was for the good, though.
Well, that's your point of view.
All right, now, when we come back, I'm going to give a State of the Union speech the way we think Clinton might have done it.
God forbid.
If he no, did you read the Rolling Stone interview that he had a couple of months ago where he got very pissed off at the end and he started to speak right from his heart about,
Clinton?
Clinton. He said, you guys, you don't give me enough credit. We're going to see what would happen if he gave the whole State of the Union speech when we come back in just a second.
If you'd like to be in our audience for Politically Incorrect with Bill Maher, call 212-512-8959.
Tonight's special live edition of Politically Incorrect is brought to you by Mentos, the fresh maker.
While in Washington, guests of Politically Incorrect with Bill Maher stay at the Watergate Hotel. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, members of Congress, members of the press, As I look out at all of you, I am once again reminded of an important fact of our civic life. That I do all the work and you sit there watching me, judging me, perched on your ample, lobby-larded asses, pissed off that I bumped Roseanne and somehow trying to imagine in your wildest dreams that you could handle this job for one day without ending up like the nutcase in Full Metal Jacket. But I digress. Now, where was I? Oh, yeah, screw you. I've chosen that as my new catchphrase. It's a little more snappy than New Covenant. And it gets to the heart of my message. I do more before 9 a.m. than got done around here in the last 12 years. And you ought to thank your lucky stars you have a president who doesn't fit his work in between naps or pheasant hunting. First, I got a budget bill passed, which I'd talk about, except, quite frankly, it's way too complicated for you to understand, and you don't care anyway. And speaking of not caring and too complicated, how about getting NAFTA through all you visionaries? God, if this Congress ever took over a movie studio, they call it 19th Century Fox. Education, please. The only book you people read is by Howard Stern, so let me know when you want to get serious about that one. Healthcare, well, like everything else, you want all the services, but God forbid you have to pay for something. Grow up. Tastes great, less filling is a beer commercial. It's not a model for how life works. Foreign policy, yeah, I didn't go to Vietnam, but at least when Bosnia comes up on page 12 after the Bobbits and the Menendez kids and the skating stories, I remember why I didn't go. You know, I deal with more crap every day than any of you will ever see in your worst nightmares, and all anybody wants to talk about is whether I drove the skin bus with some babe back in Arkansas. Well, let me tell you, as far as my private life goes, you can all blow me down with a feather if you think I'm going to tell you a damn thing. Remember all that stuff about I feel your pain? Well, how about feeling my pain for once? All of you brave, noble citizens of this country. I guess I lost my head there for a minute. You know how it is. But the important thing is that we all live in a place called hope, and in the greatest country in the world, where if we have the courage to change, we can make the future brighter for all of our children. God bless you, and God bless America. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Listen, you were great. I want to thank my special guests, G. Gordon Liddy, Harvey Fierstein, and they are now engaged, and also Mayor Marion Barry and Representative Jim Traficant. They were all terrific. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Congressman, thank you.